Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to continue our series from, I guess, the transition from the old Little Milford Hospital to now being a regional medical center. We're learning, a while ago about H1N1 and flu prevention, and tonight we're going to talk about something that hopefully none of us will ever need, but all of us need to plan for: emergency management. So why don't we start, Miss Cindy, by introducing yourself.
I'm Cindy Wilson. I work with the VNA and Hospice of Greater Milford.
John Touhey, Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director for the
Who we've learned won't sing and dance tonight, no matter what Mother Touhey has tried to get him to do.
That's correct.
And Bill Buckley, Milford Chairman of Board of Selectmen.
So we start with, I hope I never have to use what you're going to teach me.
True, and this is something we do all need to be ready for, and something that we try to work with because we work with the most fragile population as the visiting nurses. It's something we try to make sure all our patients are prepared for, but as a larger community, we definitely need to be ready for.
And Bill, you've brought it up where the emergency management is really something we have to look out for people who can't look out for themselves.
Yeah, most often when you look at events that have happened historically and you learn from them, it is the population, the senior population, the young population, or the people that might be handicapped or have some disability that are most often impacted, most severely impacted.
Or the people who can't just get in a car and drive away and go pay for a hotel for 2 weeks.
Right, that's the other portion of the population that might not have the economic means by which to navigate through that.
So even though people look and say you're only trying to take care of a small segment of our population, it really isn't so small.
Depends how long of the event and how big it is, right?
So when we talk about being prepared, do we start with talking about personal preparedness or functional?
I think it's a personal preparedness first. I think everybody has the responsibility to take care of themselves first and their family. And what we encourage people, and the federal government also encourages folks to be prepared for a 72-hour period where you're going to be able to sustain yourself with the basic needs: food, water, medicine if you're on prescription medicine. Have enough to get you through that short term. Don't be reliant upon having to wait for the government to come help you if that be the case. You should be able to stay in your house without having to leave with the basic necessities at your hand.
John, that sounds good, but I can take care of my medicine. Because if I don't have 72 hours, that's a scary movie anyway. just long weekend.
Yeah, well, you have folks who wait till the last minute to go get their prescription refilled. It's simple things like, don't wait till the last minute. Wait when you're down to 5 or 6 days or a week left. Do your refill. That way you have a little overlap with your prescription, so you have that little surplus on hand. Stocks of food in your house to make sure that you have, the extra jar of peanut butter that has a long shelf life, the canned goods, soups and things like that have long shelf lives. Just have that supply on hand. You always have a little bit extra so you can get through that 3-day period without having a need to run to the store. You see the rush on the supermarkets every time the weatherman predicts the first snowstorm of the season. It's really
we all run to the local chinchilla food store.
I don't know about chinchilla food store, but a lot of people have to think about their pets. And that's definitely a piece of it too, is making sure that you have food for them and that you're prepared for keeping them and keeping them safe.
Where do you go, Miss Cindy, to find chinchilla food?
PetSmart or Petco, either one carries it.
And they carry chinchilla food?
Yes, quite a bit actually.
I have to admit, if I think of a pet's dog, cat, chinchilla wouldn't be like one of the most common, I would think, people have.
Probably not, but there are a lot less common out there also.
So we start with medicine, having enough food. Now what happens when you cut my power? I get more worried that I've got 200 gallons of oil sitting downstairs. I'm ready to go, and somebody cuts my power. What happens to the boiler?
You're not going to be functioning at that point because you need the electricity to fire it, move the fans, and the circulating pumps and things like that. Depending on the time of year, depends on whether you can stay in your home for an extended period of time without electricity. That was one of the big pushes we had to get the high school functioning with a fully functioning, emergency generator. Thankfully, that's up and running now. It's been replaced, through the efforts of the school department in the town to get the funding there and get the work done. So that's now fully functioning. And that's our primary mass care shelter. Because that facility stores the food supplies for the Milford school system. So there's a large amount of food already on hand there. So if we were needing to feed people for 2 or 3 days, we have the supplies there already.
But now, again, as we talked to when we want to get into the generator, and everybody said, it's for taking care of a very small segment of our population. When I think about it, I could go through everything in the world, you cut my power, and it's not going to come on, as people found out in Worcester.
Right. In 2008, the ice storm certainly let a lot of people know in Western Mass over a three-week period what it would be like. And, that was extended. Power companies didn't react the way folks would have hoped. And it put a lot of people at risk.
And those people either are going to leave their homes and hopefully go to a safer area or show up at the high school.
Right, you have folks that have the ability to go to a relative's home outside of the affected area, go to a hotel outside of the affected area, but you have a lot of people who don't have the means to do that. So those are the folks that we need to be able to prepare for and take care of. And to touch back on one of your earlier comments was, the vulnerable population that we have, our elderly and our disabled folks that live in our neighborhoods. If you have a neighbor who's, elderly, lives home alone, or an elderly couple that lives nearby, these are the folks you need to check on as a good neighbor.
Before you head out.
As a good neighbor, to make sure, even if you just run into the store to get some of those supplies, ask those folks if they need anything, check on them during the event, after the event, are they all right? Are they living in a house that doesn't have any heat? And, you can maybe bring them to your home or bring them to the shelter or something like that.
But now, John, I'm going to lose power. I got a battery-operated radio, so I can listen, and they're saying power's going to be out for a few days. Or they just say power's out.
Right.
I got my home. I've spent my whole, everything I earn, everything I've done to making the home for my family. When I get in my car and I drive to the new Touheyville at the high school, should I do something to my home first? I worry about pipes freezing. Is there anything I can do?
Again, it goes back to the time of year. If you're talking a winter event, when you're in a shelter, depending on the storm, if it's a storm where travel is restricted, and once you go to the shelter, you're stuck at the shelter, you've got issues. You might want to crack the faucet, let the water run through your pipes down the drain. You just got to be very careful that, when the temperatures really drop, you're going to get freezing in the home. You can shut your water off at the service coming in.
So it sounds like if you really are going, I don't want to say abandon your home, but if you're going to relocate from your home.
If it looks like it's going to be that really prolonged event, and those are very unusual circumstances for us. We've had hurricanes that, took out power for days. We've had winter storms, don't get me wrong, we've had winter storms that have done it for small areas for a few days at a time. You got to take a strong look at that. In the ice storm in northern Worcester County, when in 2008, a lot of people were going to the shelters and spending the night there and going back to their homes during the day, checking on their homes, because it's your life investment, and to walk away from it. And most shelters won't accept pets. So you've got
So Cindy's chinchillas have to be on their own.
You need to care for your pets, and so you need to, most people will have enough supplies at home where they can feed their dogs or cats or whatever the pet may be, but each day they're going to need to check on that animal and make sure everything's okay.
So I'm going to leave my home. If I'm worried, I should know where the water shutoff valve is to my home.
Right.
And that's a scary movie, because I wonder how many people, if you asked them,
Know where it is.
would have no clue. And then once I've shut it off, I can go around to open up some strategic faucets and
Just drain it out. So, again, this is the extreme, though. You run that risk. the primary concern is obviously to make sure that the people are safe.
Sure, absolutely.
And property is the secondary. But in addition to your regular water piping, if you've got forced hot water heat, you got water in all those pipes throughout your house too. So there's only so much you can do in an emergency situation. You try to keep your house closed up and keep what heat's in there.
I like your idea of cut the water off.
That will limit the damage. Even if a pipe freezes, it limits the amount of water that's going to
Because
come out.
what I worry about is the freeze-thaw cycle.
Right.
It froze, split my pipe,
Keeps running.
keeps running.
Right. A lot of it's going to be after the event. You get back to your home, powers come back on. You now have to determine if any freezing has occurred in your piping in your house.
Sure.
You may need to bring a contractor in.
But at least then I'm home.
Right.
And if I know how to shut it off, worst comes to worst, I shut it off till I bring a contractor.
And most people, I don't think, will leave their homes for the short period. They're going to try to stay there, even if it's cold. They're going to get the sweatshirts out, the sleeping bags, light the fire in the fireplace if they have one, and they're going to try to ride it out in their house. And this is where other concerns come up. The use of candles and things like that.
What I'm thinking of is I got grandma and an infant.
Right.
I want to be the manly man and stay home. Wouldn't it make sense to take the most sensitive of our people to the shelter if it's going to be a problem?
Definitely. The very young and the elderly shouldn't be riding out the storm, if you will, in a cold or wet environment. They should be in an environment where they've got heat, they've got electricity. We can give them hot meals. We
So I
can
can
take
bring
care of
grandma
them.
and the babies down to the high school, and then if I want to ride herd, well, there's only one of me.
Right.
So now I'm in the house. I mean, we were joking about, I went out and bought those little cranky flashlights.
Yep.
Because it seems like I know I'm going to check the batteries. I always tell myself. But whenever we have a power outage, I know I find the one flashlight or two that the batteries are dead. Candles,
No.
We frown upon them. They are a fire hazard. And most people in today's world aren't used to using candles for regular lighting and don't know the basic safety of non-combustible surfaces, chimneys around them, so that we don't have contact with combustibles. If you wanted to put one in your kitchen on top of the stove, there's a safe place for it. We prefer to encourage people to get battery-operated flashlights. Have a spare set of batteries you haven't put in yet that are still in the package. So when you grab that one that the batteries are already dead in, you have a spare supply. Or the crank flashlights that you have. Those are out there on the market. Those are a viable option.
and for people with less than double-digit IQs, do not go to your car and get the flare.
Yeah, no flares.
I read that once, that somebody went to their car, pulled a flare out in their kitchen. Well, that's great. Now you have no water, and
They had all the light they needed for a while.
so where do we start?
I think you start at home and getting yourself prepared and having the items on hand, the food we've talked about, the battery powered, the flashlights. First aid kit's a good idea, with things that you might need that may be different. Towelettes, because if you're not going to have running water, a way to be able to wash up at least a little bit. So some of the even baby wipes or something like that, or the moist towelettes that you can get, are always a good idea. Remember that if electricity doesn't work, neither does your can opener. So a hand can opener is a good idea, unless you're picking up nice. Now some of the newer cans actually have the pop tops on them, so those are great if you have them. But anything that you have that doesn't, it's a good idea. And one of the other ones that people don't always think about, if power is going to be out and if the bank's power is going to be out, is if you normally run with a debit card, a little bit of cash on hand isn't a bad idea.
From your mouth to my daughter's ears, because they usually run with about 50 cents in their pocket.
Yeah, and it's it's a good idea to have a little bit of cash around, so that if you do have to go to the market or somewhere that you need, and they're not running with debit cards right now, a little bit of cash on
Because
hand.
there won't be any.
Right, isn't a bad idea.
Okay. Well, let's take a step back. today the weather's good. You know, it's like your roof never leaks until it rains. But before the rainstorm, what should we do? I have a home, like many of us. Are there some steps I should be taking before the storm hits?
Yeah, again, it depends on the event that's coming. You know, we were in hurricane season, so you know, if you were watching an approaching storm come, you're going to want to take some steps around your yard to make sure you've taken care of your lawn furniture and things like that may be moved around by the wind and cause additional damage and things like that.
The umbrella on the patio.
Yeah, you know, things, just simple things, you know, take them away, store them, you know, in some place where they won't get damaged in a garage, under the deck, things like that. You know, just common sense things, really.
I think one of the big things too with winter coming and the winter storms is also to think about not leaving your car with no gas.
Right.
So always having at least half, 3/4 of a tank of gas there, not letting it get down so low.
But that's just, I mean, to me, keeping a gas tank above half minimizes condensation anyway. You know, so letting it run to empty, you're just setting your engine up for less than optimum performance. So that to me is common sense.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of people out there that do let it drop down for whatever reason, whether they don't have the cash to go, you know, fill the tank or whatever. But it's a good practice, just like when you're stocking your pantry at home, to make sure you have a little bit extra. So you just, before you run out of something, you replace it. Same thing with the fuel in your vehicle. You know, don't let it drop below half tank and keep replacing it. That's a good option there.
And don't sleep in your car with the engine running
Right.
because you have no heat.
And one of the other big things is generators. A lot of folks have portable generators, so when the power does go out, they just fire up that gasoline-powered generator. They're fine. Make sure the generator is outside the house. We run into problems when folks bring those into their garage that's attached to the home, in the basement, you know, thinking that it's, oh, I don't hear it, it's okay. Those are, you know, they're gases and, you know, that are burning, and when they produce the exhaust gases, it's carbon monoxide.
It's the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Same thing with gas grills.
Gas grills, even, you know, hibachis. We've had
Right.
occasions where people, you know, they do crazy things, and they get the hibachi in the garage, and it's filling up the garage with smoke, and the carbon monoxide's getting drawn into the home, and you know.
Yeah, at least if I could see the smoke of the fire, I'd feel better. You think about the competitive binding of carbon monoxide and oxygen to red blood cells.
Yeah.
Carbon monoxide's going to win. You're never going to know it.
Right. You know, and the good thing today is, you know, there are detectors out there, and hopefully everyone has one, at least one in their home, if not more. Same thing with smoke detectors. You know, make sure that those devices have batteries in them. That's something you should be doing on a regular basis anyways, to make sure that they're functioning properly. Because when you lose power, now you've got battery, you know, the battery backups kick in and you're good to go. You know, you get some protection. So if you inadvertently use a candle and it catches something on fire, you get that notification.
Even if there's no storm coming, basic steps. I mean, you talk about peanut butter. As silly as it sounds, I mean, a lot of us lived on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as kids. What other steps should we take?
I think John's one point about medication was a good one too. Don't let that run way down. You can usually, most of the pharmacies, I talked to a couple of pharmacists, and we do on a regular basis, and most of them will let you fulfill your prescription 5 days before it's due. So keep it on that cycle. Make sure you always have those extra few days of medication in the house. Don't wait till that last day to get the medication, so that if you do get stuck in an unexpected emergency, you have the medication.
Now, non-chinchilla food, what would you recommend?
I don't think, you know, they say make sure you can stay in the house for 3 days. So
But what does that mean?
it depends on your animal.
Well, no, but I'm thinking
But even for non-animal,
You know, fat old man here wants to stay in his house for 3 days. What should I have put aside?
You should have drinking water,
Right.
particularly if you're on well water. If you don't have municipal water, you lose electricity, you lose your water.
Right.
If you're on municipal water, you're going to get that water supply continuing to come to you, because the Milford Water Company has emergency generators on site there, so they'll be able to continue pumping water through the municipal system. But you should have drinking water on hand, 1 gallon per person per day. Simple rule of thumb. You know, simple things. I mean, we say peanut butter, but you know, crackers, those have long shelves You have things you can keep in your freezer that, in the event that the power goes out, you start pulling those out. And those are the things you start to eat.
Powdered
the
milk.
freezer will go a day.
Yeah, because most people still have the gas grill out in the backyard, so you can, even in the middle of the winter, you can dust the snow off and make some burgers out in the back. You know, simple foods you can keep in the house. It should be things that you normally eat, so that you build up a stockpile to a certain level, if you will, and then as time progresses, you just rotate that stock through. So you always have a certain stash on hand, and then you draw it down, you replenish it a little bit.
So label it so you know that the water isn't there for 4 years.
Right. Most foods are date coded now, so you can just simply look at it and see when rotate it through, and try to have that stockpile of things that have long shelf lives.
Well, it seemed like if you had a winter and a summer stash, because I like the idea, and I'm never going to remember to go look at all the little dates. But if you said, come spring and fall, I'm going to check the food.
Right.
Then I'm going to eat the stuff that I bought in the spring and replenish it for the fall.
Okay.
That would seem like an easy way of maintaining compliance.
Okay.
Or even, when you buy something, if you have 4 cans of beans, the newest one goes at the back, and then you use the one at the front first, and it just automatically keeps you rotated.
FIFO, at its best. First in, first out. If I could convince my daughters to just keep it anywhere organized. We just went through a major addition to the high school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bill, you were instrumental in pushing it for a long time. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the credit goes to our emergency management director, John Touhey, and fire chief. I think that that was something that he had kept on our radar screen for a long time. I think the school committee...
To his credit, every year he said, I'm not saying we need it right now, but don't forget me.
Yeah.
Remember, every year you're bringing it up.
And, so these are the things that John trains for, John plans for, and this is his career, obviously. So, yeah, we had paid attention to that. It seemed like the right time. The school committee kicked in, so you see government leaders across the board from multiple areas. The school committee from a federal fund standpoint, and the selectmen in advocating for it at town meeting recognized the need, because we understood that...
But Bill, a lot of people looked and said, we got a generator.
Yeah, there was a generator, and that's a good point. There was a generator there. It was capable of lighting just emergency lighting, and that is, or powering up emergency lighting, just so that folks could get in and out of the building. So egress was all that it could do, and just that. It also had suffered from a fair amount of floods. It was located in the
Drowning
basement.
electronics never seems to be a good thing.
So some of those relays and some of those fuses had seen their useful life, and John, to his credit, kept that in front of us. And frankly, all I did was get on a committee and work with town meeting and advocate for it, but John was instrumental in making sure that stayed on the burner.
We did have a non-major emergency that, to a lot of us, was when we lost power at the high school.
Just recently. It lost power and school kept operating without missing a beat.
I was going to say, wasn't it like 3 times in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the generator automatically kicks in, and so we haven't missed an hour of education. I'm sure the kids don't like it that much, but that was one of the benefits of going with the improved generator that's able to completely operate the high
The
school.
automated transfer switch.
Everything's automated. It's outside. It's larger capacity. It's going to suit the needs of that facility for years and years to come.
Yeah, because you think about it, last year, or the year before somewhere, we had an instance where some squirrel did something to a transformer, and all of a sudden you had a bunch of kids in the pool,
Right?
and the lights didn't come on.
Right.
Went
Yeah.
dark.
That old generator failed at that time. It had, like Bill had said, it's been underwater, I think, 4 to 5 times over the years, in flooding situations. It was a poor design in the beginning to put that equipment in a basement location. It's just, not done in today's world. So we've moved it outside, everything's modernized, it's working great.
And you think about if it's me or my child trapped in a dark hallway, that seems like an emergency to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sets you up for liability too.
And just some of the planning, we've talked a lot about some of the planning that people can do, and that's very important. But just to make sure it's clear, from a government perspective, John, police chief, and town government in general has been planning for a very long time. We look at some of the things, we keep getting learnings from different events. John comes back, filters that through. The town, from a town meeting standpoint, has made some serious investments, not only in generator, but types of things like it invested, or at least it allocated the funds. It subsequently was paid by the water company, but the emergency trailers, the message boards,
Right.
all ways in which the CTY, the emergency communication tools, are ways in which government, prior to any event, is planning. And I look at that as our fundamental responsibility, is to make sure that government's ready when it needs to be, to the extent possible. John's point is a good one. There may be a period of time for 2 or 3 days where government can't react to each and every individual. And so that's why people have to take it upon themselves to be personally responsible. But government's got, and I don't know, you may be better suited than me to go through the list of the types of things that we've
How have
recently
you
invested.
prepared? I mean, number one is make sure Mother Tuttle is available to cook us all dinner. So Carla, come home.
Carla's part of the team. When Hurricane Earl was coming up, and it was right at the time when just before school was going to open and everything, and Carla and I communicated back and forth as to availability of staff if we needed to open the cafeteria to do meals, and she was on board with that. And so we have regular communications. So the plans are there, if you will, in the background all the time. And then as an event like a hurricane, which is coming, and in today's society, in today's world, we get a lot more notice, if you will. The weathermen give us the ability to have a day or two to plan an event, for the most part. So, we'll dust it off, we'll make the contacts, we'll dot all the I's and cross the T's and get on board.
John, we got 28,000 people. A disaster's coming. Talk to me about plans. Are you planning to house all 28,000?
No, and realistically, you don't see that. Even in the worst disasters around the country, even like the most closest to us and most recent was the northern Worcester County ice storm of '08. You're not dealing with 100% of the population that's going to look to shelter. There are a number of people that have the mindset, like you were saying earlier, this is my castle, I've invested my life to it, I'm not leaving. And they don't leave, and they stay in their homes and they weather the storm there. And that's where the 3 days of preparedness comes into play for them. The frail people we're going to need to deal with. We're going to need to take those people. A lot of people will leave the area. Will go and seek their own shelter on their own, whether it be a family member in a different community or in a hotel or a motel someplace.
So gut feel, the new emergency center, the high school, how many people can you support?
We do an assessment with the Red Cross. Red Cross comes and walks through the facility with us, and they go over the handicap accessibility, the cooking facilities, and all that.
I mean, thank God you got showers in there. I mean, you've got
that's what makes it the best location for us is that it has everything. It has adult-sized everything too. It's not an elementary school that has everything on a smaller scale. We can do about 500 people there. It's going to be tight, but we can house about 500 there. Secondary shelter is the Stacy School. We'd open up that as a secondary.
And you just run food back and forth?
You'd be able to run food back and forth at that point.
Can you imagine the size pot Carla's going to have to use to feed everybody?
But again, historically we haven't seen very large events like that. We had the blizzard of '78 where folks got trapped. We had people on the roadways that the fire department at that point, I wasn't a member of, were taking people back in. I was stuck in Southborough for 3 days.
They're bringing people to the armory.
Yeah, I went to St. Mark's School. They fed us great.
I remember walking after day 2. I couldn't stand being home anymore. Caught a ride by the highway department down to Birch Street and walked back to Waters in snow that was that deep. Of course, I was 20 years old? Totally naive that as I walked in with 3 sets of fresh clothing, that I would get to keep said clothes for people who had already been there 2 days. I don't think it lasted more than 30 seconds, but we had food being snowmobiled in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the types of events, you know, I think people get a little bit goofy sometimes when they talk about emergency planning. I don't think we can plan too much, but I think sometimes people will think of, you know, catastrophic events, nuclear events, terrorism. Certainly those are possible. But the things that John has focused the Board of Selectmen on, town meeting on, town government on, FinCom on, are those things like ice storms, those things like hurricanes, those things like blizzards. Now, that's not to say that when you build that foundation of an emergency preparedness system that you wouldn't be ready for anything else. But once you build that foundation, you can react to an awful lot of things with those tools. I think the town has been very generous to support some of the plans that John is and his vision of what a good emergency management system looks like. And I think overall, I think we're pretty well prepared. I think we can always work on something. There's things we can do to drill. There's things we can do to make our citizens more prepared and take advantage of technology as it comes along. The communication tool is a classic example where people register with the fire department, the police department, and they're notified. Should there be an event, how should they react? And we can, I think it's 18 minutes or
the
short period.
Blackboard Connect CTY, that's the replacement, if you will, for the old reverse 911 system that we had that had its limitations. And that was clearly evident during the water emergency.
If you weren't part of the school system, you probably didn't get called.
Well, we got, we utilized the Worcester County Sheriff's reverse 911 system also, but again, that has limitations, and that's the limitations of that system because of its design is the number of phone lines you have access to. The Blackboard Connect CTY that we're on now is remote from us. It has redundant sites across the United States on all of the different power grids, so if one power grid is down, it still goes to the other ones and sends out the messages. But we've been utilizing it for the water band we have going on now.
Seemed to work now.
It works great, and it's very, very quick. Within a matter of minutes, everyone in the community has it. What we do is we upload, or the company uploads for us, all of the residential and business phone numbers for the town of Milford. And that would be the Verizons, the Comcasts, the Vonage, all that. But it doesn't capture your cell phones. It doesn't capture your emails. So folks can go onto the websites if they want, onto the town of Milford website, police departments, fire, and the general government. And there's a link right on the homepage where you can go in and register all of those other numbers. You can put your cell phone number down. You can put several other phone numbers down there. You can put your emails. So you can get all of these messages. So even if you're away from home, you're at work, and there's an emergency in town that you need to know about in your neighborhood, you're going to get it on your cell phone.
So step one, get on the Milford website. Get your cell phones, get everything registered.
And you can even opt out. For those who don't want any messages, there's an opt-out version to that too. You can go onto that site and say, I don't want to hear from anyone.
And make sure your neighbor's registered. We talked about earlier some of the things that people can do today or tomorrow. There may be that elderly person next door. If they don't have a computer and they haven't thought to bring down a piece of paper to the police department or the fire department, register their neighbors. Make sure their neighbors are registered. At least they're going to be notified, and that's important.
The Milford way, take care of the people who need to be taken care of.
And Bill brings up the point. If folks don't have access to a computer, they can come to the fire department or the police department, and we'll enter that information for them. We'll take care of it. They can just fill out.
So they can send you a letter.
Send a letter. Give us the contact
Dear
numbers.
John,
This is
here are my contact numbers.
This is my address. It needs to be linked to an address. But we'll be able to take care of that for them. I mean, that's important, to be able to get that information out and get it out in a very quick manner to everyone.
Well, you mentioned it. I could be at work in Boston.
Sure.
The weather can be very different, an ice storm. And I mean, I don't want to think of a nuclear threat.
Right.
Because somebody drops a nuke on the center of the universe, there's more than 500 people we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. It's a different emergency.
It's a different emergency. It's not something you can easily plan for.
Right.
An ice storm, though.
Sure.
That could happen at a moment's notice.
An ice storm, one of the things that we've talked about is a tractor-trailer truck turning over on 495. With the right load in it, we might have to evacuate 4 hotels or 5 hotels.
Right.
And so there's a case where there's a lot of trucks going through 495 under the right set of circumstances, and hopefully it never happens. But we need to be ready and need to be prepared.
I happened to be looking over Dawn O's shoulder once, and she was sketching notes about what happens if that truck hits the hospital. How are you tied in? I mean, we now no longer have the Little Milford Hospital that could. We've got a full-fledged medical center
That can.
that can. What happens?
There are always, the hospital has all sorts of alert phases in place, and they put it into play, and the VNA helps because we're off-site. So, I mean, if something happens to the VNA, we go to the hospital. If something happens to the hospital, they go to an off-site. And you start your programs where you need to, and you move your
And that
patients as you
happened,
need
my
to.
mother was getting an MRI the time I saw you there because there was a little fire.
Right. We meet and work with the Milford Hospital on a weekly basis. I'm there every Friday morning for a disaster committee meeting, a subcommittee
okay.
meeting. We have full committee meetings once a month. There's safety and emergency management committees that are out there. We drill with them regularly. Where the fire departments, they're drilling at least twice a year with the hospital staff on varying issues. And one of them is mandated, which is that mass decontamination unit that we have, that we support the hospital in case there is a chemical emergency of some sort. We decontaminate folks before they get into the medical facility, and we wouldn't have to shut down a facility then. But we do plan regularly. They have extensive plans in place to cover all emergencies, from natural disasters to chemical emergencies and things like that. They have the Joint Commission, which oversees the hospital, the medical facility. They come out and do on-site inspections, and they're there for a week. They were just here this past year doing a survey of the facility. So they're a very regulated industry, and emergency preparedness is very, very high on their priority list.
Now, John, let's say something happened very local to Milford, and we have a couple thousand people need help. What happens when 1,000 people show up and you put 500, or you squeeze as many as you can in the high school, shuttle them down to Stacy?
We have the ability to, through communications with Mass Emergency Management Agency, stand up and activate other shelters, throughout the state, as necessary. The state is actually engaged in a process where they're looking at regional shelters, mega shelters, where they'd be able to house, in the event that something really catastrophic happened in the metropolitan Boston area, and they're going to move people westward to, the suburbs. They're going to have larger areas where they'll be able to shelter folks.
So this is like, for years you've told us the Milford Fire Department, as great as it is, can't staff for peak times you need mutual aid.
We can't stand alone.
Right.
The fire service routinely relies on mutual aid. Whenever we have a working structure fire, that's a minimum of 2 towns coming in to assist us, recalling all of our off-duty folks. Anything greater than that, you just keep multiplying that. The folks just keep coming in. Police department the same way. They have mutual aid plans in place. Emergency management is very similar. We communicate to the state level, and we identify what our needs are to the Mass Emergency Management Agency, and they are a conduit to us to get the resources that we need.
One other thing, Bill, kind of a challenge coming up for the selectmen. We have our bulletin board on Channel 8.
Right.
And we know that, when Paul Revere installed it, it was state of the art.
Yeah.
But today, both chiefs, don't have immediate access.
Right. Yeah, that was actually a learning that we got from the water crisis, and certainly fair criticism, in my opinion, to both our websites and the Channel 8 cable. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Those are some of the things we're planning for. Our website's going through update. You'll see an active emergency management system within that, and contact names and numbers. There's already pieces of it being built. Some of the other learnings, we obviously need to be able to communicate to people. Not everybody's home when the emergency happens. So we've shared the emergency management numbers, emergency contact numbers for all of the employees. So should we need highway? And Tom, John's here now, but certainly Tom O'Laughlin, Police Chief Tom O'Laughlin, and John work together to make sure these systems are in place. If Tom were here, Tom could elaborate on a lot more where he participates, but he's also active in that regional planning and local planning with the hospital, and reacts on a regular basis.
So hopefully the new bulletin board will be like the generator. We start talking about it now.
That's right.
We build it in, because it certainly makes sense to give you the ability, through security and password, firewall protection, all the good stuff, to be able to put up there is an emergency in town. This is Chief Touhey.
Right, and that's the way that the Blackboard Connect's set up. I can be vacationing in Florida and be notified that they need to send an emergency message out, and I can either do it by phone or through a computer, and I can send that message from Florida. That's all it takes. So it's the same thing with the Channel 8. We should have that remote accessibility, like you said, password protected and through firewalls and all, so everything's safe. But to be able to get that message out to every avenue that we can to spread the word.
Yeah, I mean, I like having the school menu there and all the good shows and everything like this one. But if there's an emergency, one of the things that we've talked about we have to address is, how do you give the key people, selectmen, the water? As silly as it sounds, Andy was out in the woods vacationing. So when we got the call saying, how do we get a message up on Channel 8? We had to hunt Andy down, and a lot of times out in the woods, you ain't getting to him.
Right.
And there was no way of getting to the Channel 8 board unless we found the good Dr. Albean and where he was in the woods, and him driving here at 2 in the morning to update our board.
And that's one of the problems that we've had in the past, has been that some of the systems we've had, the access has been controlled by a single individual or one or two individuals. We need to broaden that, so we give the authority to a larger group of folks, so that if somebody's on vacation, there's other people there that
the
can
mini
step
Touhey
right.
can take
They
over.
can step right in. So with the Blackboard Connect CTY, there's 4 of us right now that have full access to send whatever we want, whenever.
Well, that was the $26,000 investment in the reverse 911.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody faulted the logic. We've said the next step to consider ought to be access to our bulletin boards.
Right.
Yeah, updated website.
And then the website, and you keep going on saying we'll get better every year. Now, question. We've got a lot of people in town who English is not their first language. They're not necessarily tied into local government. How does somebody who needs special help, and yes, in a perfect world, I know my neighbor has access problems, she's in a wheelchair, whatever, I should take care of her. But what happens if I'm not a nice person and I get in my little car and I drive away? Is there a place where we can run a red flag up to say, hey, don't forget special people?
Folks with disabilities can register through the 911 system, so when they dial 911, it comes up on the screen in the dispatch center what that individual's special need is. They can always communicate it to us in that fashion. We've tried to reach out through the electric company and utilities to identify who they have as pre-registered customers that are in special needs. And unfortunately, they're not allowed to share that information back with us.
So through HIPAA.
Well, yeah, it's hard, and it's going to be a voluntary thing. And you have folks that are reluctant to identify themselves as in need of special assistance. So it's an educational tool. Milford Commission on Disability is active in that area where they're trying to identify how they can best reach out to these folks, how we can best reach out to them.
I'm hesitant to call you and say I have special needs.
Right.
But if I do, I think one of the concerns is, does that information get distributed, sold, plastered on the billboards?
No, the information that's in the 911 system is solely in the 911 system. If we add additional information into our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatching system, it's within the record management system of the police and fire departments. So that would not be sold or distributed to anyone.
People don't have to worry that if
No.
I want to tell you I need help, or I might need help, but I don't necessarily want everybody in Milford to know.
Right. You know, and depending on what your needs are will depend on what level we can help you. But at least we know that you have a special need. You know, you're on a mechanical ventilator, so we're going to make sure that you have electric power at your home. And if you don't, you know, you've got a battery that lasts 8 hours or something like that. You know, we need to know that, so we need to be able to get to you
I need
in a
oxygen.
timely fashion.
I got one tank.
Right.
I mean,
Right. You know, and the need may be, or the result of our assistance may be that we going to have to transport you to a different location. But we're going to help you.
home, no oxygen.
Right.
Transported oxygen.
Right.
And most people on oxygen, that's why part of it is to keep at least 1 or 2 backup tanks at the house, so that you do have a few hours, so that when the electricity goes out, it's not an immediate problem. There are backup tanks, and that's, again, if the VNA is in there, that's part of our help with making sure that our people are prepared for that kind of an emergency.
How do you deal with the people who don't speak English?
Milford Regional has an excellent interpreter program. And so we are able to use the interpreters through the hospital, and they help us to explain to people what we need to. There are also some churches in the community that we have been working with. And many of the people come to those churches, so that we're able to work through the church and help the people in that community to learn things they need to learn.
Like when I
how to
show up
work.
at the high school, if I can speak Portuguese, Spanish, I should identify myself, right?
Correct. Right.
I mean, it's always helpful to say, if you need somebody who speaks Portuguese, I can do okay.
Yeah, one of the things we've just done recently was we've filed for a grant through the Mass Emergency Management Agency to, it's called a CERT grant, Citizens Emergency Response Team, and we're looking to establish one of those locally. And so we'll start off small with like 25 volunteers that will come in. We'll train them on a number of things, including shelter management, CPR, and first aid, and things like that. But skills that we'd be looking for in those folks, you know, obviously someone who's bilingual would be a fantastic asset to have on that team, because it's those emergency situations that we need. Going back to the Connect CTY, you can identify, when you go to that website and log in and identify, you can identify the primary language of your household. So we have the ability to send out a translated message in certain languages,
Yeah, well,
not all.
Tom had said there's like half a dozen languages.
Yeah, it's not everything, but we have the ability to do some. So, you know, it's important to get that information out. But it's a difficult thing. It's an area where we have to reach out through, you know, local churches, other venues where these folks go to, where we can safely distribute that information to them where they don't feel threatened by us.
Well, also, as we work with the selectmen, and you want to put up a message, you know, we may be able to work with the local communities to say, can you give me 10 templates? So that the chief can look and say, well, that's not exactly it,
Right.
but it's close enough that I'll get the message across to somebody who doesn't speak English, like, do not go near the plains. We've had a chemical issue there, or stay out of the heights until further notice.
Yeah, 495's closed.
For, I may not
whatever.
know
There could be a
the
lot of
exact
different
details
things.
because I can't understand English.
And you know, in all honesty, our emergency management, our public safety folks deal with this on a daily basis. So it's not as if they're thinking about it for the first time. When we make appointments to the police department, as an example, one of the things we might look for is the ability to speak Portuguese, Spanish.
Well, Tom was saying he had a
He
Portuguese, a Spanish.
Absolutely.
He was finding officers that are multilingual.
Right.
When we made an appointment down at the building department for inspections, we made an appointment and made that consideration and made sure that there was benefit or consideration to multilingual. Certainly, and that's, you know, Lorianne Braza-Clary has been a tremendous help and continues to be an asset.
Yeah, we heard the Braza part of her name tells me right away, I can talk to her.
Yeah. So yeah, they're dealing with it on an ongoing basis, and so it's constantly on their mind.
Well, I think it's key, because I never think that you're going to the hospital or the medical center every week. You know, Bill, what you're saying is profound. You have to stay on top of it.
Could you say that again? Sorry.
If you don't, then by the time the emergency comes, it's too late.
Right. You know, you have to stay engaged. You have to know who the other key players are, if you will. And the first time you want to meet someone isn't the day that there's an emergency. You want to have that ongoing working relationship with the key players in the community. You know, so when an event happens, everybody's familiar with each other. They know their abilities. They know their roles in the emergency. And I got to say, you know, working with the folks at the hospital has been great. You know, they're a great asset to this community.
Now, pets. I mean, I don't envy anybody in Southwick. Let's see, what do I do with my elephant or my tiger in case? No. Let's deal with most of us who don't have exotic pets.
Okay.
Now, the chinchillas, yes, you're the first one I know of in the area that their pets are chinchillas, but dogs, cats, birds.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Besides having their supplies on hand, I would recommend having, like for a dog or a cat, always having a crate on hand so that if something happens and you have to confine them to a small area of the house, you can do it safely.
Now, I have
know
an
where they're
almost dog. It's a quarter pounder, no cheese. Compared to the Touhey mooses, it's a lot easier for me to put my little dog. What are you doing? A real dog. A crate?
A crate, a room.
A room.
Yeah, you know, folks when they're leaving, you know, if they're going to leave their home and go to the shelter and they're going to leave the pets behind, you know, number one, make sure that they have, you know, the food and water. But they're limited in where they can roam the house. If you're going to leave them in the house, put them in the garage, put them in a basement, you know.
Put some blankets out there so they can get warm.
Let them get comfortable, get them a place where they're sheltered from the storm and they have the basic necessities, you know, and you'll be back in, you know, 12 hours to check on them again. You know, aside from opening up a pet-friendly shelter, which the American Red Cross doesn't participate in, so if the shelter is assisted by or run by the American Red Cross, it's a non-pet shelter. So we're going to have to look at that as we go forward because so many people do have pets. You know, we have facilities that are large enough, and it may be that we open up, you know, a pet shelter at, you know, the highway barn or something like that. But again, when you do a pet shelter, you're talking about there's rules associated with that. You just don't bring the dog down and drop it off. The dog has to come with the crate, with the food. Typically, they tell the people, you know, take a picture of you and your dog together.
Put it in there so we
know, so that you can identify who belongs to who.
A lot of times they want a vet certificate, so they're good things to keep on hand that, you know, the animal's healthy.
I hadn't even thought about that. It's got its rabies shots.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with running an animal shelter.
What else would you recommend? What other steps? What should people think of?
I think one of the other things that people want to think about, if you have an emergency and you are at work and somebody's at home and there's an emergency and you can't get together or you can't get to the house anymore, is to have a contact area or a contact outside the area. So that you have a person who, if you have family in another state or another town at least, that you know that if we have an emergency at home, we all call this person. And that person will be our contact if we can't get a hold of each other at home.
So kind of like you do with towns, we want mutual aid amongst neighbors.
It's a family communication plan.
Right.
An excellent website to go to is the federal government's ready.gov website, and it has numerous preparedness, a lot of preparedness material on there for both families, businesses, you know, large and small, what you can do to prepare your business in the case of an emergency. But the family communication plan is a part of that. And what you should be doing is having a primary contact outside of the affected area. So if you have a relative that lives in Florida, that's the contact person. It's not that you're going to go there, but you're in Boston working, your daughter's at school.
What a great idea. Tell everybody, use your cell phone,
call person.
Auntie Bell.
Right, and then you can check back in a few hours. Is everybody accounted for? Everyone's accounted for. Doesn't hurt to have a secondary one in case, you know, that aunt or grandmother is away.
Not there.
Right. You know, so you have two that are outside of the immediate area so that if there is an event, you can check in. everyone knows the important contact numbers. You make sure those cell phones are loaded with the important contact numbers, who you should have. And you all should have, in case of emergency in your phone, the ICE in your cell phone, so that if you're ever in an accident or something along those lines and you're not able to communicate, but you have your cell phone on you, they can open it up and go to ICE, and that's the person that
And
they
people
reach
should
out
know
to.
that's on every cell phone.
Right.
Because if I get knocked out, I want them to know who to call.
Right. In case of emergency, ICE.
Coming down to the last minute, how do you want to, what message do you want to leave at the end?
From my perspective, folks just need to be prepared. Stay abreast of what's going on around them in the world, so that if there's a weather event coming in, they're aware of it beforehand, and try to have that 72-hour package ready for you to go in your house. Be prepared.
And as people think of ideas, like always, get them to Chief Touhey, get them to the selectmen, because a lot of the comments help us get better.
Yeah, government's preparing, individuals need to prepare, hospitals, businesses are preparing. Certainly it's something that, if you pull out that book or whatever it is that says, here are the things I'm going to need, and think through it a little bit, we're all going to be better off. And the other thing is, we've talked about a lot, but it's worth saying, watch out for your neighbors.
Right?
They may need some additional assistance or help, and that's a big part of how people get through things when a disaster does strike or emergency does.
Well, thank you for joining us. And again, as always, I hope I never use your services, but I'm sure glad you're going to be there if I need them. So to everybody at the Center of the Universe, I hope we all learned a little bit. Sounds like being prepared is the first step. If you have any questions, both chiefs have always been open to answering them. The selectmen have always been proactive. So use your local government, send in your comments, and may God bless, and let's hope that you have a good, quiet evening and we never have to prepare. Tonight, we're going to end the show with a little bit of music from Duckin' It Easy, local band. It's the first time I've shown music, but local Milford boy, parents from Milford High, class of '74 and '73. So hope you enjoy the music, and good night.